Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Building Subtext. Today I want to briefly go over how the premise builder works, at least just the top section. So this might be a two-part video. I might go over everything eventually again, but just to make it super clear, just because I get questions like this occasionally. At the top here, we have the two most important sections. You have the narrative personality on the left, which is the arrangement of conflict within the 4 through lines. And then on the right, you have the pivotal elements. So once you have these two choices made, you kind of lock the narrative into a certain place. And you'll see the pivotal elements are these 16 elements. One will be taken by the main character and the other will be taken by the obstacle character. And kind of the idea of like, you and I are both alike, that kind of thing. It's also represented here. You and I are both alike. So what happens, or just what is an understanding that needs to be understood, is the idea that when you have your narrative focused in a certain area of the mind, like you're looking at conflict in terms of what can I get, what can I obtain, you're going to get a certain kind of elements motivating conflict within that story because these match up with where this is in obtaining. Because they are part of that family. And these families are down here. If you look at this first choice here, what is the goal of the story? You'll notice this says obtaining and this up here says obtaining. They're saying the same thing. If I change the goal of the story, like it's not about getting something, but instead about understanding something, well, now I get a completely different set of narrative elements here, different set of pivotal elements. Because these motivations are what create problems that can only be resolved through understanding. Same thing if I went back to obtaining, these are the kind of problems that are only resolved through obtaining. They're connected together. And so those are those first two families. And then if I look here at doing, so sometimes you can just have a narrative about doing something, doing the work. And then these are the pivotal elements that will be geared towards that doing. And then the last one would be learning. And so if understanding is appreciating what's really going on, and these are the kind of problems that create problems that can only be resolved through understanding, then these are the kind of motivations and inequitable conflict within a story that can only be resolved through learning. So these are intimately tied together. And if I switch if I go to see, well, what are all the different personalities that exist, or where are the focuses of conflict in each through line, not just the objective story goal, but for the other 3 through lines, I can turn that on by flipping this switch here. And now you'll see I have the quote unquote goals for the main character through line, obstacle character through line, relationship story through line, objective story through line. And this is the goal of the story. It's the most important one. That's why I just leave this on here. So it just says, what is the goal of the story? If you want to see them all, now you're asking, what is the narrative family of this story? And these are 4 categories that describe these 16 elements here. So these are motivations that are contemplative in nature. These are elements that are aspirational in nature. These are elements that describe people's capabilities, what they're able to do. And then these elements have a more profound nature to them, a little more serious, a little more heavy. So you'll see as I flipped through these, when I did aspirational, well, we got obtaining, which is what we had before. And then the other 3 to balance out that obtaining, well, you would want to focus the main character, their goal is the future. And the obstacle character's goal is subconscious. And the relationship story's goal is becoming. Those all fit together because they're all looking at the same thing down here at the bottom, just from 4 different points of view. So when you have a problem of avoiding something, well, in this story, the objective story will focus on resolving that through obtaining something. The main character through line will focus on resolving it through futuring something, setting up your future. And this narrative family, where these elements are at the very the very seat, the very bottom of conflict in the narrative. And you can change the way you look at these and shift perspective just by pulling this over here. So you'll notice I shifted the objective story conflict away from obtaining something and now more towards working towards the future. So if this was something like Saving Private Ryan, like, oh, we got to go get, this guy because all his brothers are dead. We got to go retrieve him and bring him back. Is it the man or the mission? That kind of stuff. This would be something more like Braveheart or Gladiator, where we need a future country for ourselves, or I need to make sure the future of my people is secure. Whereas now the main character, their sole problem is about, in both those cases, is about revenge, getting revenge, killing as many people as you possibly can. But you'll notice when I shift the objective story, it doesn't change the family of elements here because we're still focusing the conflict in this area of future obtaining, becoming subconscious. It creates a personality for that narrative. It creates how the story feels, which feels completely different to if it was a Christopher Nolan film where he focuses conflict in the past and understanding and memory, like Memento, right? Conceptualizing, like manipulating people, Tenet, doing all that kind of stuff. No matter where you put the objective story, this focus of concerns for the entire narrative will stay in this area of past understanding, conceptualizing, memory. And then down at the bottom, the seat of conflict, where the initial thing hits, will be the same set of elements. You're just looking at them from different points of view, depending on where you as the author are more interested in focusing the conflict for those 4 through lines. So no matter where I put the objective story, this is going to change. The only thing that changes is when I set the focus of where I'm going to find that resolution. So if I'm in here and I'm all about understanding, like, oh, what's really going on? If I change that to be more about, well, okay, what can we learn from this experience? Now you'll see this change to present, conceiving, conscious. These are all essentially saying the same thing, all looking at the same problem, but seeing it from a slightly different point of view. And that's what creates a complete story. That's what creates a cohesive narrative. So I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions about how all of these are related together, please leave me a question in the comments below or contact me directly, and I will see you next time.